Reba led Brock out to the porch. She didn't offer him tea. She didn't offer him a seat. She just leaned against the railing and waited. Barbara, Jean, and I are. We're taking a break, Brock admitted, looking out at the street. She's gone to a silent retreat in New Mexico. Apparently, my aura has become too jagged for her to meditate around. Reba couldn't help it. A small, sharp laugh escaped her. Jagged? I know I messed up, Reba, he said, his voice dropping an octave. Seeing you on that stage, seeing what you and Van have built, it made me realize how much I missed out on. I was the captain of this ship once, remember? Reba turned to him, her eyes flashing like heat lightning. No, Brock. You were the guy who jumped overboard the second the clouds turned gray. You didn't miss out. You opted out. You traded the jagged reality of this family for a woman who thinks you can fix a marriage with a crystal. I just want back in, Reba. Not as the boss, just as part of it. I want to help with the business. I know real estate. I know Houston. The business is fine, Brock. Van is an idiot. But hear my idiot. And he's the one who stayed. And in from Bizova. DM Bizova. She looked at him and, for the first time in years, she didn't feel anger. She felt pity. Brock was a man who lived in the past because he couldn't handle the present. He wanted the glory of the Oscar without the grit of the garage. Go home, Brock, she said softly. The Jablonski house is still for sale, I hear. Maybe you and Barbara Jean can find some harmony there. But don't come back here looking for a seat at the table you flipped over. As he walked away, his shoulders slumped. Reba felt a strange sense of lightness. The ghost had been exorcised. Chapter 8. The eye of the next storm. The months rolled on, and the tactical diaper empire went public. Van became a minor celebrity, appearing on talk shows to demonstrate how to change a diaper while wearing a gas mask. Kira's band signed a deal with an indie label, and Sarah started elementary school, her backpack adorned with tactical turtle patches that were now the hottest item in the Houston school district. Life was still messy. There were still lawsuits. There were still burnt dinners and screaming matches over who used all the hot water. But something had changed in Reba. She no longer looked at the chaos as a problem to be solved. She looked at it as the scenery. One evening, as the family gathered for their weekly command council dinner, a new face sat at the table. He was a quiet man named Elias, a local contractor who had come to fix the roof after the last hurricane and ended up staying for Reba's brisket. He didn't talk much. He didn't have a vision. He just sat there, laughing at Van's jokes and making sure Reba's glass was always full. So, Elias, Van said, pointing a rib at him, what's your tactical specialty? You look like a guy who knows his way around a breach and clear maneuver. Elias smiled at Reba. I'm pretty good at fixing leaks and staying calm when things get loud. Reba reached under the table and squeezed his hand. It was a rough hand, calloused from hard work, and it felt like an anchor. That's exactly what we need around here, Reba said. As the sun set, painting the Vesper Avenue sky in that familiar, fiery gold, Reba looked around her table. Van was arguing with Kira about the physics of a diaper-launching drone. Sarah was drawing on her napkin. Elias was smiling. The hurricane was still raging outside. The world was still loud, demanding, and unpredictable. But inside this house, right in the center of the noise, Reba Hart had found her peace. She didn't need smooth sailing. She had a crew that wouldn't quit, a boat that could take a hit, and a heart that finally knew how to weather any storm. Hey, idiots! She laughed, standing up to clear the plates. Who's ready for dessert? And if anyone says tactical cake, they're doing the dishes. The chorus of laughter that followed was the only music she ever needed to hear. Chapter 9. The Logistics of Love. Life with Elias was a startling contrast to the high-decibel drama of the Hart household. He was a man of few words and many tools. While Van was busy designing a stroller that could survive a landmine, which Reba had strictly forbidden, Elias was quietly reinforcing the porch steps and fixing the leaky faucet that had been dripping since the Bush administration. You know, you don't have to fix everything, Elias, Reba said one Saturday, watching him plane down a sticking door. He looked up, a smudge of sawdust on his forehead. I like things that work, Reba. Besides, a house this loud needs a solid foundation. Well, you've got the solid part down. The relationship was the smooth sailing she had always imagined, but with a twist. It wasn't that the storms had stopped, it was that she now had a co-captain who didn't panic when the waves got high. However, the peace was threatened when Van decided that the command center needed a European expansion. He had his sights set on London. Think about it, Reba. Tactical nappies. We'll have a Union Jack edition. We'll call it the Royal Leakage Protocol. Van, we can barely handle the lawsuits in Texas. You want to start an international incident? It's not an incident, it's an invasion of comfort and utility. Reba looked at Elias, who just shrugged and went back to his door. She knew what this meant. More flights, more lawyers, and more time away from the porch. The eye of the hurricane was moving, and she was the one holding the map. Chapter 10. The London Breach. 3 months later, Reba found herself in a rain-slicked London, staring at a giant billboard in Piccadilly Circus that featured Van in a beret, holding a diaper bag like a sniper rifle. I look sophisticated, right? Van asked, adjusting his trench coat. I feel like Bond, James Bond, but with more baby powder. You look like a man who is about to be arrested by the Queen's Guard. The expansion was a logistical nightmare. The British market was skeptical of tactical parenting. They preferred their baby gear to be sensible and understated. They don't want molly-webbing, Van. They want ducks, Reba explained after a disastrous focus group. Ducks? Ducks are for losers. Ducks don't survive the trenches of a 3 a.m. blowout. The stress was mounting. Reba was missing Vesper Avenue. She was missing the Houston heat, Sarah's drawings, and Elias's quiet presence. She spent her nights on FaceTime, watching Elias eat dinner alone in her kitchen. "How's the royal protocol going?" he asked, his voice a comforting gravel through the phone. "It's a disaster, Elias." Van tried to convince a duchess that our diaper bags could double as a bulletproof vest. She nearly called the police. "Come home, Reba. The porch misses you." And the faucet started dripping again just to spite me. Reba looked out at the London skyline, grey and cold. She realized that no matter how big the business got, or how many Oscars sat on her mantle, her heart was still anchored to a small street in Texas. Chapter 11. The Homecoming and the Hostile Takeover. The return to Houston wasn't the victory lap Van had hoped for. While they were across the pond, a rival company, Nurture Now, had started a whisper campaign, claiming that tactical diapers were dangerous and over-engineered for the civilian market. "They're trying to cancel us, Reba," Van yelled, pacing the command center. "They're calling our camo prints militant. It's a diaper. It's meant to hide poop, not start a revolution." The board of directors, which was mostly Reba, Van, and a very confused accountant, was panicking. Nurture Now was moving for a hostile takeover. Reba stood in the center of the glass-walled office, looking down at the city. She saw the storm clouds gathering on the horizon, real ones this time. "Let them come," she said, her voice dropping into that low, dangerous tone that made even Van stop talking. "What? They think they're dealing with a corporation, Van. They think they're dealing with numbers and marketing strategies. They don't realize they're dealing with a family from Vesper Avenue. We didn't survive Brock and Barbara Jean just to be pushed around by a bunch of corporate suits in beige khakis." She called Elias. "I need your help. Not with the roof. With a different kind of construction." "I'm already in the truck," Elias replied. Chapter 12. The Final Stand. The showdown happened at the annual Baby Expo in Las Vegas. Nurture Now had a booth the size of a football field, filled with pastel colors and soft music. Tactical Diapers had a small, matte black stage in the corner. The CEO of Nurture Now, a man whose teeth were too white and whose suit was too tight, approached Reba. "Give it up, Mrs. Hart. We have the capital. We have the distribution. You have, what? A son-in-law who thinks he's a Navy SEAL?" Reba stepped onto the stage. She wasn't wearing a dress. She was wearing jeans and a tactical diaper t-shirt. Behind her, Elias stood like a mountain. Kira's band, Velvet Chainsaw, was positioned in the rafters, guitars ready. "You have capital," Reba told the crowd, her voice amplified by the massive speakers. But we have the truth. Being a parent isn't about soft music and pastel blankets. It's a war. It's a struggle. It's messy. It's loud. And it's the hardest thing you'll ever do. On cue, Kira hit a power chord that shook the entire convention center. Van rappelled from the ceiling, throwing sample packs of high-velocity leakage protection diapers into the crowd like a manic Robin Hood. "We don't sell BIM," Van screamed. "We sell survival." The crowd went wild. The moms and dads of the trenches didn't want the fake perfection of nurture now. They wanted the jagged, honest reality of Reba Hart. The hostile takeover crumbled before the first contract was even signed. Chapter 13. The New Normal. Back on Vesper Avenue, the dust finally settled. The business was safe. The London expansion was scaled back to a sensible boutique level, and Brock had finally moved to Florida to open a soul-cleansing juice bar.